Welcome to the Escape Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, and here is some bum, Josh.
Hey, hey, hey.
All right, here we are in recording number 2 of the Corona Meltdown.
Yeah.
What have you been doing to keep busy? I mean, we recorded, a week ago, but...
Just normal stuff. Laundry, dishes, taking care of the boy,
chores.
Putting toys away. Yeah, little stuff like
that. You
get
to play with your kid more often. Is that kind of fun?
Yeah.
In some ways, I picture that being kind of like going back to being a kid yourself. You just get to goof off with your kid.
Yeah, it's fun. He likes to do little treasure maps and, run around the house trying to find stuff and building his tracks and stuff and racing his trains and all that.
Yeah, I've also been doing some housework and playing around with the Nintendo that I just got. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got it, even though it cost some money. But I'm glad I got it because it's been keeping me entertained. Stuff to do.
Yeah. I bought a classic iPod. That's a big deal for me. I've been wanting one for a while.
Oh, welcome to the year 2000.
Well, no, I had one. I had a 5th gen iPod, now known as the classic, like back in the day. And I've been kind of wanting one again. I don't know why. I just kind of like the old school iPods. So I finally bought one. I got a 6th gen classic. And it's just cool because I've loaded like all the songs I have, I put on that. My iPhone, I only put like certain songs on it, because I want to have room for other things. But this one, I went ahead and put everything on it. So it's just kind of cool to like have stuff that I don't normally listen to come up. And I don't know. I just like the old format. I like the classic iPod. I don't know.
If any of our listeners still use iPads or iPods or whatever, not iPads, I guess, but iPods, let us know. Or is Josh the only one?
So they discontinued it in 2014, I believe. And I guess like ever since then, there's kind of been a resurgence of interest in it. So
from hipsters.
Well, I don't know who. I'm no hipster, but I don't know. I just think it's kind of cool.
No, you're just hip.
True that. I don't know. Anyway, let's get on with it, shall we?
Yeah, there hasn't been much to do because we're kind of on lockdown. We were actually talking about taking a walk earlier to the park, but it sounded like more hassle than it was worth.
Yeah. Plus, I don't really like you, so it was a win for me.
I figure now would be a good time because I've been a little stuffed up. I wouldn't be able to smell you.
Oh, good one.
Oh, okay. Well, this is a movie that you've brought up repeatedly since we've started recording together.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us about the movie and why you chose it?
All right. So today is Outlander from 2008. No, not Outland with Sean Connery, nor is this the time travel drama Outlander. This is Outlander with Jimmy C and an alien dragon, not King Ghidorah. This is the movie I saw again. Let's see. It came out in 2008 overseas, and we didn't get it over here till 2009. So I probably saw it sometime in 2009. I can't remember exactly. It's one of those I still go to Apple movie trailers and would check out trailers, and it was one that just kind of caught my eye. I rented it.
What caught your eye about it?
I don't know. It just seemed like an interesting concept. So do you want me to run into that right now, or
you want me to read the synopsis and you can go through with the trivia and the notes? Okay.
Do it up.
During the reign of the Vikings, Canaan, a man from a far-off world, crash lands on Earth, bringing with him an alien predator known as the Morwen. Though both man and monster are seeking revenge for violence committed against them, Canaan leads the Alliance to kill the Morwen by fusing his advanced technology with the Vikings' Iron Age weaponry. That's what it says on IMDb.
Yeah, it's kind of like Braveheart meets Predator meets Dragon Slayer and a little slice of Kong thrown in there, I would say.
That's funny because I had a list of other movies that it reminded me of.
Let's hear it. Go ahead.
Well, to me, parts of it reminded me actually of Avatar, which I think came out a couple years after.
2009, I think, didn't it? Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Some of it reminded me of Avatar. Actually, parts of it reminded me of Army of Darkness.
Okay.
Christy said it reminded her of, what is it? A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
Okay.
Which is kind of the same idea as, Army of Darkness in this movie. Somebody from another place, not necessarily time in this case. But...
Right. I guess there was some people that thought that this was supposed to be a time travel thing, that he like kind of like the Borg and, the Enterprise crew in First Contact, like they traveled back in time while they were fighting, which in and of itself, that kind of reminds me of Dino Riders, which was a cartoon we talked about, where it was about like these aliens and these humans from the future that are battling, and this time vortex is created where they both land on prehistoric Earth. So there's like these dinosaurs, there's these aliens and humans, and they're like putting armor and guns on these dinosaurs and fighting each other.
It reminded you of that?
No, but I guess there were people that thought that this was supposed to be a time travel thing, that it wasn't present time. It was just that they time traveled from the future to the past, which is not the case. It's supposed to be
that before they saw it or after they saw it.
I don't know. I didn't ask him. It was just something I read.
Impression, like he was from.
That's just what I read. Some people thought that there was a time travel aspect to this, which there is not.
If anybody out there is familiar with the Skyrim video game, Elder Scrolls V, you're gonna definitely feel a lot of that in this too.
All right. When we go into some production notes here?
Also Eric the Viking, but we'll get to that.
I feel like I did hear something about that. That's got Tim Robbins in it, right? Yeah. Okay, so this movie was directed by Howard McCain, which he hasn't done too much. The only thing significant that I could find for him was that he wrote the screenplay for Underworld: Rise of the Lycans.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. It stars Jim Caviezel, John Hurt, Jack Houston, Sophie Malaise, and it has an appearance by Ron Perlman. It was made on a budget of $47 million and only made a little over $7 million. It has a critical Rotten Tomato score of 37% and an audience score of 44%.
I saw those scores earlier, and that kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so in 1992, Howard McCain wrote the story, which was later polished by Dirk Blackman in 1998, and is loosely based off Beowulf. The events of the film take place in Norway in 709 AD. Although the film depicts a Christian priest, Christianity wasn't introduced in Norway for another 300 years in 1000 AD. The creature design was done by Patrick Talopoulos for free. The film was shown on less than 100 theaters in the US, which I think is part of the reason probably it did so poorly here. The name Morwen is based off the Morlocks from H.G. Wells' The Time Machine.
I had a hard time understanding him when he would say that, so I would think of Morrowind.
Yeah, it's Morwen.
Which is the Elder Scrolls 3. I'm bringing that up a lot tonight.
Rennie Harlin was originally planned to direct. The village and ship were built for the movie. Research was done in Norway on the 77-foot Viking ship. The crew made a film version as close as possible to the real thing. However, it had to be 10 feet shorter in order to fit on the road to get to the water for filming. To save money, a logging company was hired to cut down their own trees to build the 800-foot-long, 20-foot-high walls for the village. It was built on a farm and took 3 months to complete.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because when I was looking at that, I couldn't figure out exactly what they did. That village looked really great.
Carl Urban was considered for the role of Kanan. Jack Houston offered to do his own stunt and broke his shoulder in the process during the scene in which his character rolls under the Morwen. And lastly, the dialogue spoken between Kanan and the computer is actually 12th century Icelandic, making this the first film to use Old Norse. Howard McCain sought the help of an Icelandic professor to help translate the dead language for the actors.
Yeah, it sounded like they were speaking some kind of like Norwegian or whatever.
Which is interesting. So obviously in the movie, it's played off to be his alien language.
Yes.
But that means technically if someone walked up on him, they would totally be able to understand what he was saying. But
I feel like it's an Easter egg almost.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the concept.
All right.
I said it reminded me of Braveheart, Predator, Dragon Slayer with a slice of Kong. You got some different ones. Tell me how you feel it reminds you of those things.
Well, the Army of Darkness is kind of a funny, like it's very vague, very little. It reminds me of Army of Darkness, but in Army of Darkness, Bruce Campbell goes back in time to medieval times.
Right.
And he's dealing with people that don't understand him or the things he talks about, or he brings with him some technology. They don't understand that either. And it's kind of similar in this. And like Christy pointed out, it's the King Arthur's court idea where, you know, here's some stranger from another world, just dropped right in, boop.
Right. Now, the only difference is in this movie, they don't really have him, show any tech to the people. nor does he really try to talk about anything from where he's from. He tells them, I'm from the north, and he leaves it at that. He calls the Morwen a dragon because he knows that's something they will understand. He never really tells them where he comes from, and if this was Star Trek, you would think that would be like some form of the prime directive to not pollute this world. But they don't really say anything like that. Just for whatever reason, he, I guess, decides it's easier just to put it in ways they understand or just avoid the subject altogether.
Right.
But anyway, so this movie goes right into the action. We're right away presented to the ship is, hurtling through space. It's obviously got some damage.
Yeah, that opening shot is the UFO crashing to Earth. What other movies can you think of that have started that way?
I don't know. What movie hasn't?
Two off the top of my head.
Okay,
Predator and The Thing.
Yeah, I guess.
I believe that was the opening shot for both of those.
Predator lands, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, so they don't waste any time with a backstory. I mean, we get his backstory quickly through a few flashbacks. The ship travels through the atmosphere. We see a farmer or something herding his sheep. He looks up at the sky. Okay, great. And into the water he goes.
Mm. And that was actually kind of neat. The special effects in this movie vary from scene to scene.
Yes.
But it was kind of neat the way they had it. They had him crash into the lake and it kind of flooded the immediate area.
Yeah. Just to say about the effect, some of the shots I thought looked great. And then some of them, you could kind of tell like it didn't look so good, but I think all in all, they put the money in the best places.
In my notes, I ended up writing down at one point, like the special effects vary between actually being pretty decent for the time. And even nowadays, some of them it kind of hold up. And then between that and then going down to like Mortal Kombat levels.
Yeah, a few of the early shots when the Morwen is on the wall, it didn't look that great, or like the first time the villagers really see the Morwen in the distance wasn't that great, but whatevs. It almost seems like the later shots, the action shots, are where it starts to look a lot better. So that was probably for the best. Anyway, I like when movies do this. There aren't many that have done it, but they explain how he's able to speak their language. It's almost like what you would consider maybe like the black box or something floats to the top. He's able to send a distress signal, find out if there's any ships in the area. And another thing is he's able to get his location. And that is where we find out that Kanan and his people are actually the same people as the people of Earth, that this is an abandoned seed colony. So he's technically not an alien. They are the same people.
Okay, well, I missed all of that. That popped up in the computer?
When he opens the computer and he's talking to it, he says ships in area and the computer says no. He asks for location. The computer says Norway, 709 AD, Iron Age. And then it says abandoned seed colony.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of cool to know he's actually not an alien. This is just, for whatever reason, they were putting people, which we kind of see that later, they were trying to take over the world that the Morwens were native to. So clearly these people just like to plant flags on various places. Earth was apparently one of them, which why they abandoned it, I don't know, or why when they set up a colony here, they didn't just set it up with the tech they had. They almost let it develop. I don't know if it is they let it develop from scratch or because they abandoned it, had to do it slow.
Yeah. That's a recurring theme between those ancient alien people. They all talk about stuff like that. It was part of, what's that space show?
Space show?
Dirk Benedict.
That weird looking guy, isn't it called Ancient Aliens?
No. Dirk Benedict, the sci-fi show.
Oh, I don't know.
With Starbuck.
Oh, Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, Battlestar Galactica. That's kind of a theme from that in there. Even like Prometheus. I don't know if you saw that.
They show that he's having the language and things fed into his brain quickly, painfully. But what I thought was kind of funny is later he doesn't know what to do with the horse, which was supposed to be played for laughs, but it just didn't make sense because one, he should have had that fed right into his brain. And two, he sees them riding a horse. Why couldn't he just figure out what the horse was for? But he, what am I supposed to do with it? That was kind of silly. But again, I suppose it was supposed to be played for laughs, but I can let that go.
And he had a co-pilot with him. He had a partner.
Right. So when he pulls the guy out of the water, like I don't remember seeing the gash on his chest, but later he pulls him to shore. He kind of passes out, and when he wakes up the next day, the guy has this huge gash in his armor.
Yeah. It's hard to tell if that was from the crash or if that was maybe while fighting the Morwen.
In the ship. Yeah, I'm not sure. So now he's alone. He takes his armor off except for his shoes. I don't know.
What did you think of their armor? It looked like armor. It was a spacesuit, but it looked like medieval armor.
I guess kind of, sort of. I didn't think medieval as much, but yeah. So the helmet was the big thing where it kind of almost like Tony's
I wrote that down
shield.
In my notes. Iron Man helmet.
Yeah, like not the first version of Tony's shield, but the second one where it's like nanobots or whatever it's supposed to be, where they basically like it almost looks like it's digitized into his face. Mm-hmm. And it opens up and kind of pulls back. It's a terrible movie, but if you've ever seen the 98 version of Lost in Space, Matt LeBlanc has a armored helmet that comes out kind of like that. This one looks a little better, but that same kind of idea that it opens in pieces and folds back to the back of the neck or whatever and can come out.
Maybe Lost in Space should be one we do later.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of cool. They don't really show it again. I think that's the one and only time you see it is right there. But what did you think?
I thought it was neat. Like, to me, I thought it looked like a suit of armor almost the way they did it, and which was kind of neat, different looking for a spaceship.
Right.
It came out. Iron Man came out in 2008, right?
Yes.
This was made in 2008, and then by the time it hit theaters, I think it was January. Like it got
they got it overseas in 2008. We didn't get it till 2009.
Yeah. So it would have been made around the same time, I guess. So it's hard to say that they would have copied off of it. It's just funny when you see two ideas happen at the same time, and that's something that happens all the time.
Now, the ships, to me, if you see like Terminator 2 and 3, it kind of reminded me of that look, just bigger. But the way
a longer Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. The way the Terminators, like, essentially it's almost like helicopters for them in the beginning of Terminator 2, where they're flying through and I was also kind of surprised to find out this movie was rated R. I never knew that until just this time, I guess just to do with the violence. But even that, I didn't think it was all that super bloody.
By that, because I can picture somebody watching this with their kids.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't watch this movie with my kid, but like I just didn't think it was a rated R movie. I thought that was just
like a 10-year-old could watch it. I don't think there was a whole lot of swearing.
No, there was one F word. No, none of that. I guess just the sword fighting and then monsters eating people, but
especially for 2008, that's a weird R. It's got to be the blood. There's just too much blood, I guess.
Yeah. This is probably one of the last movies that had, in my opinion at least, where the female lead is, they're kind of doing that strong female thing. They have her, we're introduced to her sword fighting, practicing with her father, so she's kind of, we're learning that she can handle the sword, but then later she's, tending to wounds and cooking.
Well, this is what I wrote. Her name is Freya. This is what I wrote for her character. Okay. Princess of this village, and so to speak, daughter of Hrothgar, and possibly the love interest of Wulfric. And we'll get to that.
Clearly, he wants her. They make it out that she has no feelings toward him. Brittany came in at one point, and I said, does she remind you of anyone? And she says, what are you getting at? And I was like, she looks like the live action version of the girl from Brave. To
For
me,
some reason, I was thinking the ogre girl from Shrek.
Princess Fiona. Okay, very well.
I'm not saying she's ugly or anything, but that just popped in my head. So yeah, she's a strong, independent woman. She's close with her father. She can fight, but still partakes in activities thought to be more womanly. Like we see her caring for people. And I think at one point she's even making some clothing.
I recall her cooking.
And she's played by Sophia Myles. You said that earlier. And
yes.
I don't know her from anything. She's a British actress, except I've seen her maybe in one episode of Doctor Who I saw her.
Yeah, I was going to say, I knew she dated David Tennant, or I think is.
I have no idea who that could be.
In fact, it says they just broke up right before she started filming this. But I was saying to Brittany, if this movie was made today, they would have totally had where she saves him in the end. So this movie, like I said, it's like right on the cusp. Now everything is so about women being smarter and women being better. And they betray her as being capable and brave, but also she ultimately in the end is still a woman. and he saves her. They don't overly push it in your face, which was nice and refreshing to me, because I feel like every movie now, the girl has to, show up the man, and men are portrayed as stupid and pigs. And
I think maybe Taken might have been the last time we see a girl getting kidnapped. In fact, and I think in the Taken sequels, it's the man who gets kidnapped, and the girl has to save him.
Yeah. I almost felt like they were laying it on a little thick with her, like sword fighting with her father in the beginning. But I don't know. I thought
in some ways it almost makes sense to me. Like, she's an important person, and he wants to train her to defend herself, especially in the Viking world. There's probably going to be a fight somewhere later.
I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I feel you. I was wondering, and I don't know the answer, and I'm not expecting you to know, but did people believe in dragons still in 709? I wondered how accurate that was. When he wakes up, he finds his shipmate is dead. He gets a gun, and he realizes the Morrowind is somewhere now on Earth, and he starts tracking it. He finds himself to a village and sees that there's huge claw marks and everybody's dead or gone, and he knows it's out there. He even finds a whale that has, I don't know if it's supposed to be that it got beached from his ship crashing, or if it's supposed to be that the Morrowind, we later see it can swim pretty well. If it killed it and drug it to shore, I don't know. But it's clearly been devoured by the Morrowind. So he knows it's there, and he gets captured by Wulfric, who is like the Riker of the king. He's the number one guy, and brought back. He's, held captive. They're very concerned about the fact that their rival clan has been slaughtered, because they're worried that when he comes back they say he's gone back to do some trading or something, he's going to immediately think they did it, and it's going to cause a war.
Mm-hmm. So okay, I just looked this up. You might find this interesting. I don't know how true this is. Apparently, a Swiss naturalist and medical doctor, Konrad Gessner, published a 4-volume encyclopedia between 1516 and 1565, where they mention dragons as very rare but still living creatures.
Okay. They're questioning Kanan to try to figure out, what happened. And he tells them a dragon. And they kind of scoff at that like it's ridiculous. And that's why I wasn't sure, they did a lot of homework with the ship and the village and different things like that. I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be accurate, that people didn't believe that dragons was kind of a fairy tale to them at that time, or what. But anyway.
In this movie, they reacted to him as though he was telling... They even use the phrase children's tales.
Yes.
Yeah. Wulfric is kind of odd to me. This is what I wrote down for Wulfric. He's Hrothgar's nephew and heir, which makes the love interest kind of weird, because that means he's Freya's cousin.
Oh, really? I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Now, I guess that would be more common back then. In royalty, didn't a lot of times they believed it was better to keep the... to keep strong bloodlines,
That's why some of them look kind of weird. With giant ears or buck teeth.
Right.
He's a capable fighter, and while smarter than the rest of the men in his village, he's quicker to act than he is to think, and he's overly eager to prove himself. He's played by Jack Houston, and although a big part of a big and famous acting family, I don't really know him from anything. Do you know him from anything?
I looked up and saw that he played JFK's brother in The Irishman that just recently came out. Okay. He's had little other bits. This is the only thing I know him from offhand.
Okay. The only credit I noticed him from was Hail Caesar, where he played Cad and Cab, and that is not a memorable role at all. That must have been a really small part. I don't remember him. His casting in this movie felt somewhat odd to me, because he seems scrawnier than the lead actress. And he's supposed to be a Viking warrior. He's not a muscly guy. And she seems
not
more
overly
tough than him. And then also he's got a tan, and he's got long dark hair and dark features, which would better suit a character maybe from the Mediterranean region as opposed to a Nordic person.
I mean, I guess, but this movie wasn't exactly the biggest budget, so I guess they kind of had to work with what they can get. But
it was just something I thought about while watching it. Whenever I wrote down notes for him over here, I actually referred to him as the Spaniard.
Well, one thing, though, I will say I liked, usually a movie like this, where you have this one alpha male and then this outsider, usually what they would do is have this long thing where they're kind of at odds with each other. They're constantly one-upping one another and, jealousy and all this stuff. And then finally in the end is when they would kind of get on the same page that we're on the same team. But this movie it's relatively quick. They kind of become friends, so to speak, early on, or at least, working together pretty well, which was nice. It was refreshing. That seems like that's been done so many times before. Yeah, I mean, at first he's skeptical of him and whatever, but he gets over it really quick. The king learns to trust him.
They go on a hunt and they kill a bear, and then once he kills the bear, they're like all buddy with him pretty much.
So the king accepts him and gives him his life, realizing that he could have totally ran away.
Is that what you're going to refer to him as, the king? I wasn't sure.
He is a king, yeah. I mean, they may not call him a king.
Chief, village leader.
I mean, I thought they said the king. I mean, he doesn't wear a crown. It's like a medallion they wear as a form of a crown. But yeah, the king realizes that he could have ran away and escaped or, during that time, but he chose to run in and help.
He actually saved his life.
Yes. So the king grants him his life and even gives him a sword, sets him free. Because he was bound at that time. And
this is what I wrote down for Hrothgar, the leader of this village, chief or king. He doesn't seem to have a wife. I don't know if they ever mentioned that.
I almost feel like they did mention the mother, but
passed away.
I'm assuming so.
Though he's older, he still seems to be able to fight. He's grooming Wulfric to take his place to become leader, and he's also a fair leader, willing to listen to others, and he even wants to make peace with a rival village.
Yes, they do push that he very much does not want to start a war with this rival clan. He talks about the young boy whose parents were killed and how he'll be okay because we take care of our own. So there's this sense of loyalty and duty to do the right thing by his people. And that's nice. He's not a corrupt king, which would be another thing you might see a lot in movies like this.
There's a lot of refreshing things in this movie. That's one of them. He's played by John Hurt, who's been in a ton of things, including the original Alien, Rob Roy, Hellboy. It could go on. He
had a small part in Doctor Who.
Oh, well, there you go. Most British actors, I feel, probably have. In my notes, I kept referring to his character as Gandalf the Magneto.
Okay. So we learn through a flashback that the Canaan's people, they never really named them, but they are conquerors. They like to go to set up planets, and the Morwen world, which I don't even know if they named it, but it's a world they came across, but there's these big creatures on them that are inhabiting it, and they basically destroy them in order to colonize it. And part of me was like, the way they showed them bombing it, I was like, is it even going to be worth living on once you did it? Like it seemed like they just destroyed the planet in favor of trying to colonize it. But anyway, they're simply eradicating this native species to set up their flag there. And his reward, he says, as one of the soldiers, was that he gets real estate. He gets some property. So he has his wife and his young son there. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be going out for, I can't remember some routine thing, I guess. But unbeknownst to them, Morwen has survived. They say a single Morwen, but theoretically, I guess it could have been, there could be more, but they know at least one has survived and it kills this colony.
This whole backstory didn't really make any sense to me. I wrote down kind of the same things. I said, well, they use very large explosives to destroy the creatures on this planet. So what, they get the charred remains? Like, if they like the planet so much, I'm sure there were other areas where those things didn't live. And then they kind of hint that maybe they were sentient, which I'm not sure. Like, they don't say straight out that they were.
Yeah, no, they don't. I thought somewhere I was doing a lot of reading on this. I can't remember if it was in the movie itself, but somewhere they talked about a cave that it was able to take shelter in. And we see that it dwells in a cave here. It kind of sets up home base in a cave in the movie.
Well, they're not stupid creatures, whether they're sentient or not. They're more intelligent than most of Earth's animals, I would say.
Right. So let's talk about them. They're about 15 feet tall, but the shoulder almost reminds me of a bull, the way its back would hunch over. It's not its head that goes up about 15 feet, but it's like its back. It walks on its knuckles in the front, which is kind of cool, which reminds me of a gorilla. But then it can open up its hand and it has these huge claws. It has the teeth, It has some kind of like spikes. The tail has this whip feature, which it almost was like it was firing almost like
Lasers.
laser blasts. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's supposed to be like a barb, like almost like a stingray. And another thing it does, it's kind of like an anglerfish. It has this ability to use light, like a jellyfish. It can illuminate itself and draw things in.
With all sorts of colors.
Yeah, a lot of times you see red a lot, though. I feel like there was red and kind of blue and purple that was the main ones. I don't remember seeing like yellows or oranges or whatever, but regardless, usually you think stuff like that would be for animals that don't have a lot of
light,
claws or the teeth, where it has claws and teeth, but it can do stealth stuff. So it could run in like a lion and just tear people up, but it
when
also
it growled,
does.
it kind of sounded like a lion. I wrote down that it kind of looked like a cross between maybe like a lizard and a wolf, a little bit of a panther in there, and then just mix that with a dragon.
Yeah, I'm sure they mixed a lot of things.
It almost reminded me of going back to Avatar. Like there was the panther creature in Avatar, although I feel like where in Avatar all they did was take earth animals and add legs. This was much more creative. It had multiple tails.
Absolutely. Well, I wouldn't say
Like
it had multiple tails. It split off into a little, it kind of reminds me of like the Cat of Nine Tails. It's like a whip that at the very end has a few extra.
Mm-hmm. They must have been sharp or something because it seemed like he was piercing people with them.
Yeah. I think it was like a barb. It was almost like a sharp, like a stingray's barb. So I actually thought the design was really cool. I was glad I watched it again because I didn't notice like that he walks on his knuckles like a gorilla.
I did not notice that. That's a cool detail.
When he's running, I think he uses, palms down, and obviously he can grab things.
It's very quick too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the design of the creature was great, and most of the time that we saw it, like when we first encounter it, they show it very little, and then when they do show it, it's in the dark.
Which is nice. It's a nice build-up. They catch this bear, and they're celebrating, thinking they won this big victory, but Kanan kind of knows.
He's trying to warn them that there's the dragon, so they go out looking for it. They ended up killing a bear instead, thinking that was the creature that attacked them the night before, because they never actually got a look at it, but he knows better.
Right, and it's around this time, I believe, that the warring faction, led by Ron Perlman's character, which I think his name was Gunner.
Yeah, Gunner.
He thinks that this clan has come in and killed his people and taken his wife and child. And I was really bummed that Ron Perlman's character didn't have a bigger part. He's actually killed, in my opinion, too quickly. I was kind of hoping maybe he would be the one to help at the very end with the final battle, and would also kind of show that this has brought peace to those two clans.
There might be a chance that Ron Perlman was busy that time too.
Could have been.
It's funny in my notes, and even like because I watched it twice, and I rewatched it today for the second time, and I did not realize until I started looking up stuff for this movie that was Ron Perlman.
Really?
I wrote in my notes that it looked like it could be Ron Perlman's brother.
Oh,
but I didn't realize that it was actually him because he seems a little bit smaller in this movie, like slightly skinnier. Yeah, and he's got the full big beard, which I've never seen him like that before.
Oh,
so and he's completely bald. And since I've never seen him like that, like he had certain features that looked very Ron Perlman-y, but I didn't think it was actually Ron.
Well, he was wearing a chest piece for Hellboy, right?
Yeah, but still, I think of him as a bigger guy.
Okay, I think he's like 6'3". I mean, he's a tall guy, and usually when we see him, he's some kind of monster himself. But he was using these hammers.
He used to be the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, the live action TV show from like 1990 or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, with Linda Hamilton, late 80s, I thought, right? But it had Linda Hamilton in it as the beauty, so to speak, the Belle or whatever.
The Belle.
I mean, I don't know if she went by Belle on that or whatever, but anyway. So yeah, he uses these hammers, which they show that the hide of the Morrowind is so thick. The swords aren't doing much. Spears, the hammer he has, it's almost like two of Thor's hammers that he's using to bust skulls, literally, has broken over the hide of it. And at one point they even set this trap where they use a pit filled with kerosene, and they light it on fire, and he's on fire, but he doesn't seem really fazed by this. He's still taking care of business. So this is one of the parts I really liked, is that's finally when Kanan realizes this metal for these swords and axes and whatever aren't going to cut it, literally. So he goes to the crash site underwater and starts bringing up scrap metal from his ship, which I thought was a really cool idea, that the thing that brought this monster to this world is kind of the key to taking it down again. He has the blacksmith start fashioning new swords and things out of this metal.
Well, you skipped over one thing that I kind of want to get to. The shield scene. Describe the shield scene for us.
No. So it was, I think, right as they're celebrating from the bear victory is this game where they kind of line up forming a circle, like the shields, the round shields, like maybe about the size of a manhole cover, maybe a little smaller, I don't know. And Wolfric will get on top, and it's like, I guess, a game to see who can run the fastest around it without tripping, I guess. And he challenges Kanan to join him. I was kind of confused, like, one was on one side going one way and one was on the other side going the opposite way, like literally, in a circle. I was like, are they supposed to catch up with one another, or is it just to see how fast they can go without tripping? But eventually Kanan does this fancy little flip and jump and lands on one of the guy's shields, which is impressive, and then it cracks. But that's really when him and Wolfric put their, issue in the past.
Yeah, even though he didn't complete the task, like it cracked and he fell, then they all laughed about it and had a good time. But it's such a weird scene. I don't even know what to make fun or make of it, because it's kind of a fun scene, but at the same time, it's stupid, but like not offensively stupid.
I would say he did succeed because he made the landing. It's just the shield cracked afterward. But I think it's just to show that he is acclimating to these people and fitting in. And that was one thing I noticed in most movies like this, whether it be a time travel thing or just the idea of someone from a more advanced place going to a more primitive place. Typically you would have them saying things like, oh, I can't wait to get back home. Oh, I hate this food. Oh, this would be so much easier if I had just, my weapons or my tools or my tech. He never ever.
Why didn't he just use his blaster on the
He lost it in the very beginning of the movie. It was lost.
How did he lose it, Josh?
When Wolfric finds him, they knock it out of his hand.
And then it goes flying into the river.
Yes.
Okay.
What are you getting at?
Nothing. I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
That's the reason why he's not using his space.
Well, I understand that, but I'm saying he never complains. He never fusses and puts down them for being so primitive.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I just wanted the listeners to know that's just like, why didn't the guy just blast him with his laser?
You might be able to argue that maybe there's another gun somewhere in that ship and he could have swam down and found a weapons locker in there, but they never reference that.
Probably would have done a good job on the monster too, because he tests it at the beginning by murdering an innocent tree.
Yes. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of cool that he doesn't make fun of them, put them down. He doesn't complain about what he has to use in order to get the job done. He just does. And that was also refreshing to me.
Much like Ash.
Okay. Yeah, I've only seen that movie maybe twice.
Yeah. Yeah, there's parts that are refreshing. There's another thing where he's not panicky about the whole situation. Like in a lot of these similar stories, he would be constantly freaking out saying, we got to go get this thing. You got to listen to me, blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't do that. He just kind of like tells them calmly what's happening. They don't believe him. Something happens. He's like, I told you before, this is what's happening, calmly. And then finally they start to listen to him.
Right.
But like in a lot of other stories similar to this one, like he'd be yelling at them, you got to listen to me, while they're throwing him in jail or something. And then it wouldn't be until the monster like came in and killed everybody that they'd be like, all right, well, let's hear what he has to say. He tells them, they reject it. He tells them again, they start to listen a little bit. And then he tells them the third time and they get it.
Well, I think that was because they saw it at that point.
Yeah.
So,
but they started to kind of listen to him before they saw it too.
Well, okay. It's during the bear celebration that he tells Freya, this was no bear. This thing is out there and it's going to come back. And it's about this time we see one of the guard towers. The guy gets shot with an arrow, and it's Ron Perlman's gunner and his army coming at them. So there's this big attack between the two, and they finally get the upper hand on Gunner and his men, and they start to leave. And while they're out in the woods planning their next attack, the Morrowind starts attacking them. Some of the survivors start running back to his walls saying, please let us in. They think it's a trap or a trick of some kind, but Kanan goes down and opens the gate to let them in. And that's when they see the Morrowind light up and killing a guy.
This is where, because Christians are dumb and need to be the butt of all jokes, the priest comes out. And this is what reminded me of Eric the Viking, actually, a little bit, because they have a Christian priest. He sounds like he might be Irish, hanging out in the village with them. I feel like that has to be a reference to Eric the Viking, because
Yeah, that was a little later, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
in the 90s movie, oh yeah, that was after they set up the traps. In the early 90s movie, Eric the Viking, all these Vikings are traveling around. The joke is there's a Christian that doesn't share their beliefs in the Norse gods and all that stuff. And he's trying to mission to him all the time. Well, as they're going through and fighting all the monsters and stuff, he can't see it because he doesn't believe in it. So he doesn't see the dragons. He doesn't see the monsters. They even go up to the moon and he doesn't see their gods.
Okay.
So he's not affected by the plot because he doesn't believe. And that's like part of the comedy of that movie. And this one, there's the Christian minister or priest out there trying to be like a missionary to these people. And he just walks up to the monster and says, "Go away, Satan," and gets eaten.
As they're preparing to build this trap and whatever, they show that he's praying. And then later, they show him come out and get basically face to face with it. And if anything, I would say that was brave. They're probably trying to knock Christianity by having the priest get killed. But I mean, I feel like a lot of these movies would have him be a hypocrite or chicken out at the last minute, or not follow through what he was saying. But he actually, what's that?
Maybe, but I feel like it was supposed to be a comedic moment.
Probably, but I would still argue that he was brave in trying to do that. I mean, would you go out there?
No,
exactly.
But I'm not stupid either.
No, I mean, yeah, but I mean, still, it was a brave notion to try. Better be brave than be a coward, I suppose.
Continue.
Okay. So this plan doesn't work.
Yeah, it's during the trapping scene. It's not quite going to plan. They do light it on fire and it does get injured, but not enough.
And it was after this that he realizes that the swords are not going to work. He asked to go out on the boat and she wants to go with him as he's down there getting scrap metal and tying it to the rope.
Yeah, we find out there's a baby monster and it kidnaps her.
Well, see, I wasn't sure if it was that or if the parent was kidnapping for the child, because I think they show the one guy that wakes up, one of the guys that was taken alive, and he wakes up and actually sees its birth.
Well, when Kanan goes down and dives into his ship to get the metal needed to make the sword.
Yeah, you see something swimming in the background, but I didn't know if it was because of the distance, if it just looked smaller, or if it was actually...
I got the impression it was the baby version.
Okay.
And it must have kidnapped her, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, so basically the Morwen is taking people back to its lair for the child, or maybe even itself too, like stacking up.
And it's a lot of people. It's
right.
Not just a little bit. That whole cave is just filled like from floor to ceiling with just bodies and parts everywhere.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of the scene in Fire in the Sky when he wakes up and there's just like all these, cells full of people. And like some of them are, mutilated and stuff because of the experiments. But like, where she wakes up in this pile of bones and rotting flesh, and
that's actually probably why the movie's rated R, is because of those scenes.
Probably. So they fashion these new swords, and he realizes that while they were guarding the wall so desperately, the well was left open, and that it must be coming from the well, which leads into this underwater cavern into this cave. So they go down through the well and come up into this cave. Now, have you ever seen the movie Dragon Slayer?
I have not. Is that the Disney one?
No, I don't think it's Disney. It came out, I want to say 81. It has, I don't know his real name, but the guy who played Janosch in Ghostbusters 2.
Yes. Okay.
He's in it as the lead. But anyway, this is very much like the Dragon Slayer movie, because in that movie, he has to go into the cave to find the dragon. And I'm not saying they copied it. Maybe they did, but it definitely reminded me of that. So yes, they go into the cave in hopes to find Freya, and she actually is able to get the killing blow on the smaller one, while we think that the bigger one is dead. They show it kind of collapse. I think they did get some good hits on it, and it was probably hurting and exhausted at that point. So you're kind of led to believe that maybe it's dead, but it's not. Now, you might also argue that this is kind of like the 98 Godzilla except for less babies, but the idea that the big one is down and there's all these little ones to contend with. But
no, because there's only really one. I was surprised that there weren't more. Like, I thought they might have a few of them, but it seems like the baby and the adult were both enough to take out basically everybody. And the whole reason that she's able to take them out is because they threw her a sword, and they had blinded the little one earlier. They kind of cut it across the eyes, so it's kind of feeling around.
Oh, yeah, that's right. At one point, yes, the small one is blinded, and you see it's using, at that point, sound, maybe even sense of smell to hunt her. And somewhere along the line, they catch up to her, but there's like this wall between them, but there's this little crack that she can't fit through, and they pass her the sword, and she's able to decapitate it right there.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. Like, it was sad seeing some of those guys go. There's one of the background characters that you kind of grow a little bit attached to.
The one that he offers him the drink on the horse, and it was his shield guy. Like, I was kind of bummed that guy died too. I don't recall his name, but
he was a very likable character. He seemed to actually attach himself to Kanan pretty quickly.
Yeah, that almost became his first friend. So let's see. He makes a pretty good relationship with the king and Freya, with Wolfric, and also there's a boy right before they go on the bear hunt, offers him a piece of his bread while he's still chained up. They don't know who he is. And that was the boy the king informed him was the one his parents were taken. They take care of their own. He'll be all right. After they come back from the bear hunt, the boy wants to see the sword that killed the bear. And he, the whole thing about, I'll trade you the sword for your name.
Yeah. And Kanan seems to have a pretty quick relationship with that boy too, probably because we see in the flashbacks that these creatures killed his wife and his son.
Right. We learn from a conversation between Freya and Kanan that he says, my people are not that much different than your people. We were hungry for land. We invaded this world. We're taking it from them. And then when I came back, my wife and child were dead. In fact, he says, my ship was taking the bodies back for burial, and one of them snuck on. Now, she's probably thinking of a boat. Again, it's nice that it can kind of work both ways, where she just understands it for what it is and is not realizing, what it really means. But so, yeah, I think he's feeling this loss of his son, and kind of, especially once he probably learns that this boy is orphaned himself, he feels this attachment. He saves that boy when the rival clan comes in. He saves him a couple times, I think, and tells him to get out of there because he's, worried about him. And I think almost like, I'm sure he's the kind of guy that would do it anyway, but almost like he maybe feels like, I wasn't there to protect my own child, so I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm righting a wrong as best I can,
That's part of the, that backstory I said earlier didn't make a lot of sense to me, because it makes it out that the Morwen was actually the victim from the start, but by the end of the movie, the mission still is to kill it. And it's, I guess, the last one.
So I had just recently watched the 2005 version of Kong. It hit me more than ever, like, not that I never saw it, but it really stuck out to me. Like, Kong is kind of a victim to a degree. They invade his home, kidnap him, drag him to a world that he doesn't know, and put him on display. And you do feel bad for Kong. And I was thinking, should we feel bad for the Morwen? Because in a lot of ways, it's a little different, but it's a lot the same. His world's invaded. His kind are wiped out. They're setting up camp there. And now he's just, I don't know if he's thinking in his head as a revenge sort of thing, or if it's just a survival thing. But regardless.
Yeah, is he acting on instinct, or is he out for revenge? It's so hard to tell.
Like I'm saying, we don't know. But regardless, most people would say he's not, or he shouldn't be in the wrong for that, basically he is the victim there, but he's portrayed as more of a monster. Again, Kanan does explain that, his people were wrong for doing what they did. They were arrogant and all that. But I never felt he felt bad for it. Maybe he regretted doing all those things, but he didn't.
It sounded to me like when he was telling his flashback story that, he knew that what they did was kind of wrong.
Okay. But anyway, I just didn't feel like the movie as much made you feel bad for the Morwen. Because I remember the first time I watched this, I never felt bad for the Morwen. It wasn't until this time I started to think of it a little differently. Like, and that's another thing. If this movie was probably made today, they would probably hammer that home a lot more, and maybe even somehow probably figure out some way to trap it and get it back. Like maybe they would have, when his people came in the end, he would convince them that they were wrong and that they need to take it back or something and let it be and whatever.
But instead they kill it. They toss it off a waterfall. That waterfall scene was interesting too, because by the end, there's only, outside of the villagers who ran away, the guys that went to go fight it, there's only 3 left now, and it's Wulfric, Kanan, and Freya. And it chases them out to a ledge where there's a waterfall, and there's a scene that it reminded me of Jurassic Park 2.
Okay.
Because there's that scene with the waterfall in Jurassic Park 2, and I almost expected it to happen where it was going to grab Wulfric, and then you just see blood pouring down the waterfall. But they didn't quite do that.
The best looking scene to me was the part where Wulfric is trying to fend it off. He wants Kanan to try to get the princess to safety. He's able to get her over like a little more out of harm's way, but she's on the edge of nothing. And Wulfric is basically down for the count, and the Morwen does this thing where he sticks his head out of the waterfall and he's looking Kanan in the eye, and then he draws back in. And that's where, to me, you feel the most like he's intelligent. It's almost like he knows who Kanan is. He knows that Kanan is one of the people responsible for what happened on his world, and he's challenging him. He's like basically saying, I'm in here, come and get me. Because he could have ran out and just smacked him off the side of the cliff there. But it's like he was challenging him. And I thought that not only was that a cool scene, but it also was one of the best looking effects. Like, I thought his head looked so much like that was like the money shot right there. Like, he looked the best right there.
When he was sticking his head through the
waterfall.
When
he sticked his head out of the waterfall, yes.
Yeah, I was looking at that scene earlier, and I was kind of impressed with how good it looked.
Yeah.
And they have a cool little battle scene, and then it comes down to it. Nothing surprising really happens. They kill the monster. Wulfric dies, and then Kanan decides he's going to stay.
Well, there's a nice little scene, though, between... Okay, so he goes in there, and it's a little bit of a, kind of a hiding in the dark kind of thing, where he's hiding behind these like rock pillar formations. And, like the monster's arm would come out and try to slash at him. And finally he gets him because he sees the reflection of the bioluminescence through the reflection of the sword as he's holding it near his face. And he gets a good shot on him, and at this point, Freya comes back in and helps him. She like stabs it in the back, and this leads to the final scene where they're back out on the cliff, and the Morwen is hanging off the side, and it's got Kanan by the arm, and its arm is huge, and I thought that was cool, just how big it was. But
I don't know how he didn't rip Kanan's arm right off.
Yeah. So like, and there's a part where again they're looking at each other in the eye, and he is able to cut the Morwen's arm off and fall. Now, part of me wonders, okay, that's the end of it. But I think, okay, did the Morwen die from that? I mean, theoretically, it was...
I don't feel like they were trying to set up for a sequel, so I'm going to assume that it did.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like also, it falls into a big thing of water. It could have theoretically survived. They didn't really finalize... Right.
There's a good chance it would have broken all of his bones, though, too.
I suppose. Anyways, and there's this nice little scene between Wulfric and Kanan where he says, how, this, again, they have a medallion as their version of the crown. He's like, how I wanted this my whole life. And, he got to wear it for a day, and hopefully you'll get to wear it much longer. He gives it to him, to Kanan, and says like, I wish we would have had more time. We could have been friends. And Kanan replies, we were friends. And again, I like that this wasn't like a last minute thing. Like they basically did become friends much earlier in this film. And I just thought, usually they would have the Wulfric character, you would call it out as being, he's going to be the arrogant hotshot guy this whole movie that you kind of want to see lose. You want to see Kanan one up him. But he became a pretty cool character and a pretty likable character. He wasn't really that big of a jerk, so it was a nice little scene.
I wanted to marry my cousin, but I guess you can't.
So lastly, we see that they see a fleet of the Viking ships coming. He takes Freya down. He tells her, I have to take care of something. I'll be back. She thinks this means that he's not staying with them.
So she follows him.
She follows him, unbeknownst to him, and he goes back to the black box, sending out the SOS signal. This is where I thought it was kind of a little sloppy. So he's looking at it, and you see in the sky a ship start to come into the atmosphere, and like he's deciding what he wants to do, and then right at the last minute he uses his sword and he breaks it. And what I thought was funny, it sets off this huge explosion of sparks, and the ship just like stops and goes back. Now I was thinking, okay, obviously I know they had to just like, this is the end of the movie, they had to tie it up, but like, wouldn't they have sensors that saw, okay, there's our man right there. Oh, the black box was just destroyed. That's suspicious. Let's go down and investigate. Or like, I just thought
it was a little weird.
Now, maybe you could argue that it possibly was an automated rescue ship, like almost like a drone, but still, yeah, I just thought it was funny. They came all that way. It took them, however many, let's just say he was there for a few weeks. I don't know how long it was supposed to be. And then they finally get there. The thing blows up. I mean, they're right there on top of it, and they just turn around and walk, and go away.
I mean, perhaps there's stuff that happened in between scenes. Like maybe he went up there and said, I'm staying, I'm going to go down and destroy this thing. But it didn't look that way.
No.
I did think that the ship actually looked pretty cool. It kind of reminded me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where you don't really see it. You just kind of see the lights in the clouds.
I was going to say, yeah, you don't really see it. You just see the lights. Yeah. And then he goes down into his shipwreckage one more time. They don't show his son, but they definitely show that the coffins, which have like a window and you can see the people inside, he kind of says goodbye, so to speak, to his wife. And you're assuming his child too, because he feels like he failed them and let them down. And now he's going to set up this new life here.
And Freya sees this whole thing. She knows, she says he came from above or the gods or whatever.
Yeah. She kind of equates it to the gods, best her mind sense of it. But anyway,
it was it was a neat idea. The movie wasn't, I don't think it was as bad as people were saying. I don't think it was an amazing movie, but I don't think it was bad.
Yeah. I mean, one of the funny things too, I thought, like at one point they show during the flashback when he's about to go on his mission and he's saying goodbye to his wife and kid. His wife and kid are wearing the same like shirt, like it's just a uniform. And it just was kind of funny looking, because I was like, they're civilians. He's in the military, so let's just say that shirt he was wearing was kind of a part of the military uniform. But I just thought it was funny that all the people were wearing that same shirt. Kind of looked goofy, but I can let it go.
I did leave the film kind of wondering more about his civilization and stuff, because we don't even see his home world. We just see him invading the Marwin's world.
Correct.
So it made me curious. I'd like to know more.
One thing I thought, okay, is let's just say, this was a real thing. So theoretically, that means his armor, his gun, his ship, the fragments of the computer he destroyed, the Morwen skeletons would be discovered down the road, present day. Someone eventually would find some of these things. And I thought it would have been kind of cool, just like as a little like stinger or something, to see what people in modern day thought when they saw these things,
Have you ever seen, it made the news maybe like somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. They call it the Baltic Sea Ufo. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
No, but fill me in.
Yeah, it was like all over the news and stuff. These guys found this thing underwater, and it looks kind of like the Millennium Falcon, but it looks ancient. It's just sitting at the bottom of the water.
Okay.
And nobody knows what it is.
Is it look like a ship, you saying?
Some people argue it's a natural formation, but if you look at it, it looks weird.
So it's nothing you can go inside.
No, you know what? I'm going to find a picture of it. Give me 1 second. Okay, I just sent you a link to like a Google page with all sorts of images of it. Take a look real quick.
Oh, okay. I just got it.
You see all those pictures of it? Now, like, it could be a natural formation, but it looks so weird. There's even a part on there where it looks like there's stairs going up it. Like, and there's an area too where it almost looks like it was sliding along the seabed. So I think if anything, it may be part of like an ancient temple or structure. Like if it's not natural, but it looks so weird. Baltic Sea Ufo. Just type it in an image, people. It looks weird.
Okay.
Do you see how it looks kind of like the Millennium Falcon a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, but some of these pictures look like they're clearly reconstruction of what they think it might look like,
Some of them. There's other ones that are like, these are the sonar pictures.
Okay. Anyway, would you like to go into final thoughts? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, sure. It was a low budget movie, I think you said, or I don't know if you said, but I looked up earlier and it said 40 million.
Yeah, 47.
47, which that doesn't sound like super low, but for an action movie around that time, maybe like the Marvel movies always come in like over 100 million, depending on which movie. I think between the two, Thanos movies, there's actually $1 billion when you combine them. But that being said, for a lower budget movie for 2008 and using CG as much as they did, a lot of times the special effects actually looked really good. I was impressed with the village. I was looking around just trying to figure out exactly, were they using, they used some green screens, I think, in this, or maybe even matte paintings. But a lot of it was real location. I guess you said they built that village, and I was super curious about that. I want to know about that because that village looked amazing.
Yeah, I think the tree in the center, the way like almost what you would consider the castle with like the way like it was like I had a tree, which all was very Lord of the Rings looking to me. But and like there's a part.
Yeah, we're the main building in this village where like the king has his quote unquote throne. It was more just like a chair where he'd like sit with everybody. But like behind him, there's a tree growing inside of the building, which is really cool. The lighting in the movie was pretty nice. There are lots of, and this was popular for that time, lots of blues and oranges together. The creature design was pretty neat. It was different and unique, I feel. The acting, it was all right. Probably the best actor in the movie was the old
John
man. Yeah, I'm not so familiar with the lead actor. I never saw Passion of the Christ. How was he in that? You saw that?
I did. He was good. He was also in Frequency with Dennis Quaid.
Is that the one where he like gets messages from his father from the past?
Right. It's not exactly time travel, but yeah, it's like where they're able to communicate through time.
Time travel-esque. Yeah. So I never actually saw that one all the way through, although I was kind of interested. The story has its weird parts, and it's a little bit long, just under 2 hours. I feel like that could have been cut down, but it never really feels kind of like it drags. The pacing is all right. And it almost reminds me of the way it's set up between like, okay, action scene and then character building, then action scene, then comedy moment, then character building, then action scene. It almost reminds me of kind of like the modern day superhero movies in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Except it didn't have as many fun and goofy moments. It was more of a serious tone throughout the movie. Like the comedy was very light. It was there. It was just lighter, more subtle. They did a lot of cool things. I don't think it deserved the score that it has. I'd give it like a C+ probably.
Okay. So for me, like we said, I think, even though some elements you might say were borrowed or at the very least similar to other movies, I think it was original enough that I had a lot of fun with it. We talked about some of the effects maybe not holding up as well, or maybe they weren't even that great at the time, but I think they definitely put the money to the best use. And I think the best, the money shots, the important scenes looked good. And that's what, you'd want. I definitely feel like they were trying to put out the best product they could with the budget and the time they probably had. The fact that they built this town, they built that ship, they didn't need to do that, especially, in 2008, 2009, they could have CGI'd the whole thing. So, there was some effort put into this movie. And I think it shows. I liked that, it, like you said, it was balanced, that they were building. It wasn't just dumb action. There was action, of course, but like they, as best they could, they, gave a backstory about him and what he was going through, about what was happening with the king and his daughter. And, they did some things that weren't typical for the time, that, they didn't do these cliche kind of relationships. So it was kind of refreshing in that sense. I had a lot of fun with it. I enjoyed it back then and I still enjoy it now. I'm going to give it a B.
Okay. Yeah. I would recommend this movie to anybody that, that has at least a partial attention span. And, if movies with explosions, fire, monsters, and action in it are your thing, check it out. I recommend it.
Yeah. Well, that ends another episode. We appreciate you listening, and feel free to hit us up on one of our platforms. We're all over the place. Or don't. I don't care.
All right. Yeah. We'll catch you next time.
All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to travel through time. I bid you adieu.
Don't stop now! You can't go! All the plants are gonna die!
Where are you going? I've got to return some videotapes.
Bye, Felicia.
You want to elaborate or?
Nope, I think it explains itself.
Very well.